Well, hello, YouTube land. This is Martin Bryan. I apologize for being all gross and sweaty, but I was working on putting this video together about this amazing Grote 335 copy. And the Camera 2 audio was complete garbage, and no matter what I tried to do in post-production to amp that up with adjusting the gain, or bring down the noise level with a noise filter or compressor or even an EQ, it occurred to me what they always say in recording and engineering, you know, if you do it right the first time, you don't have to spend all your time in post-production trying to fix it. So I'm reshooting this part. This part is where I talk about how incredibly and surprisingly awesome this guitar is. So let's talk about the good things first, and there are a lot of them. All of the Epiphones I've owned, the Epiphone Studio and the Epiphone Sheridan, which was actually a signature model named after the guitar player from the band that does White Rabbit. I can't think of them right now. Perhaps I'll update that. Jefferson Airplane, which is a super high-end Sheridan, and I sold it to a buddy of mine who is making good use of it in his band. Pretty impressive watching someone else play an instrument I used to own, and Phil is way more skilled than I. But getting back to this guitar, all of those, the point I was making was all of those Epiphones, the jack is authentic, meaning that it's on the front of the guitar, and that's a real problem for some people because everyone's used to having the input jack here. So if you're not used to that, it can get in the way and you can bump into where the input jack is. That's the point of this whole conversation. Input jack on the right place. Let's talk a little bit about the components. Surprisingly high quality, although these are just the generic speed knobs. They're not top hat knobs. There's nothing sexy about them. They work, and they work really well. Typically how I play a Gibson copy instrument or an actual Gibson, I always think that the bridge pickup, which tends to be overwound and so close to the bridge, is way too hot, and I don't like it. So for most of my rhythm and all of my soloing, I turn up the neck position to 10, and I strongly prefer that sound. So this fits that configuration well, and I just crank up the tone on both. Real F-holes, this is real air here. As the guys from Anderton's said when they did a review of 335 type guitars, air is typically very expensive. But again, major selling point, this guitar, $180. This is a real binding, people. This is a real binding. How do I know that it's not just painted on? Because I took a flashlight and I looked down in here, and just like on an acoustic guitar, you can see the same type of glue work and seams have been done to attach the top and the bottom. It does have a solid block of some kind of wood. There's one negative about that, and I'll get back to that because we're talking about positives. The neck is not bolted on. I was looking at the Harley Bentons in this price range, and they had bolt-on necks. I strongly prefer a glued-in set neck. And that brings us to the other advantage of this. This layout is much, much more like a SG in terms of the neck feels longer, and the access to the high frets is incredible. You can just really get to everything perfectly. Now, the thing I don't like about an SG is because of that, it's neck heavy, but there is enough body here in the solid whatever wood here that it sits pretty close to a Les Paul. It's got a heavy boot, and it doesn't tip right over. No fret sprout. The frets are medium jumbo-ish and surprisingly good. Not a single dead spot on it. Let's start to talk about some of the negatives. Generic tuning machines, but something I've never experienced with these cheap tuning machines before. The camera's not going to pick this up, but the finish right around the screws on two of these 6 tuners is so rough that if I catch my finger on it, my finger actually gets scratched up. So when they were spraying on this fake chrome finish, it's really pretty bad. Typically on a cheaper guitar, I'm worried about injuring my hand on the front and the neck. Not a problem. I'm going to have to get steel wool or something to buff these down if I don't replace them first, because they're your typical cheap tuners. Other thing is very nitpicky, but typically the Dots I've owned, are, sorry, not the Dots, the Epiphones I've owned, the Sheridan and the Dot, the Artcore from Ibanez that I've owned, the electronics is always tucked away pretty neatly. On this guitar you can clearly see the electronics, and when you're looking in this F-hole you can even see the toggle switch. So it's like, what's going on there and why? That's about, minor finish things. You know, the bindings weren't perfectly masked off. But again, this is a $180 guitar. If I pull out my 2020 Les Paul Tribute 60s tobacco burst, it has similar levels of finish imperfections. And that guitar literally cost more than 3 times this guitar. And the finish is pretty close. Another thing, when you're looking at buying a Gibson copy, always take a look at, because the arch tops of the Les Pauls and the 335 copies make it really tricky to get the pickups properly set. And I've owned a couple of Gibson Les Pauls, you know, lower end, around at the time the model was like $900 today, or like $1,100, where you would see an obvious gap where the pickup housing and the body met. You really shouldn't have that on an American-made guitar. This guitar, you don't see any of that. If you were to cover up the headstock and put better machined heads on this, I would swear to God that this was an Epiphone or possibly even a Gibson, because I have played 335s, and this is really nice. So that's about it. I've probably prattled on enough, and I believe that the tracks where I'm playing this live are good enough, so I just needed to re-record this interview. Thanks for listening. I highly recommend this. $180 on Amazon, $20 for shipping. It shipped in like less than a week. I want to say 5 days, and I'm very happy. Again, this has been Martin Bryan. If you could please, even if you hate this video, comment, because YouTube likes that. Like and subscribe, that would be great. I'm trying to again get to the point where I can monetize my videos. Prior to the acquisition of YouTube by Google, that's how long I've been doing this, I had all of the features, I was monetized, I could do everything, and as Google's come in, they've slowly pushed down the little individual creator, and now it's really geared towards making money for the big guys. So just as a personal goal, I'm trying to re-hit the threshold to monetize. Again, not that I think I'm going to make a ton of money, but if you like, subscribe, and comment, it'll help me get those meters on the YouTube monetization page to where I need them. Thanks again. really normal people call that the scale, on this guitar than it is on Les Pauls. So it's a little unfamiliar, but not that far off. Semi-hollow Telecaster. The binding on that guitar is just painted on, and I completely understand it. It's a $125 guitar. This guitar is $180, and I was looking very carefully inside the cavity with a flashlight, and sure enough, these are real bindings like you would see on an acoustic guitar. This isn't just one piece of manufactured material that's been routed out. It's really pieces of wood that have been glued and bound together. Only issue is really that I have looking inside the F-holes, as I mentioned in the previous video. The electronics is really kind of sloppy to the appearance. Typically a guitar like this, they will go ahead and do a better job of hiding those. And then I've also noticed the center block appears to me to be maple. There is a crack in it. Now, who's going to be, only a nut job like me? Alright, so I'm going to plug this in and get some sounds. The audio and the video might not match exactly because I'm a little tired. We'll see how it comes out in post-production. Another thing I really like about this compared to both of the Epiphones I owned is placement of the jack. Not on top. Ibanez also had that. I'll call in the future. Alright, the sound is being recorded directly into the mixer. I've demonstrated how that works in other videos. Since the tuning machines are cheap, I'm going to check the tuning one more time. And sharp. Physically sharp to the touch. Rhythm track. Got the Ibanez TO 800 engaged. Give it a little something something. One thing I will say is because it's a double cutaway, obviously compared to a single cutaway, you get better access to the low bass strings on the higher frets. I'll say that again. Because it's a double cutaway, a single cutaway has the cutaway down here, so typically it's right around the 14th fret. You can get better access to the lower frets of the high strings. Since this is a double cutaway, you get that better access to the bass strings as well. But also, because of the design of a 335, the body meets the neck in a much lower position. So I don't know if you've noticed, but typically I stop around the 12th fret when I'm playing an E minor pentatonic. But I can get the octave no problem. And then one more down. Listen up. So much better low fret access. Both full Alright, that was fun. Good thing to do when you wake up at midnight. It's way more positive than other way more positive than other things I could be doing. Well,